My name's Rich Harrington, and welcome to this edition of Understanding Adobe Photoshop. Today, we're going to tackle gradients. And a gradient is a pretty simple concept. It's a gentle grade between two or more colors. So if you have red over here and blue over here, Photoshop can create a transition between those two colors as it moves across. And that's the gradation. Now, learning how to harness this ability to create your own gradients is very helpful if you want to start to paint or stylize an image or even build up a sky artificially. Let's explore how gradients are built. I've got a new document here. I'm going to go ahead and, in this case, press G for gradient, and you see it's selected up at the top. You'll see these gradients normally loaded, and it typically includes one that goes from foreground to background or foreground to transparent, as well as other options here. And if you hover over them, you'll see them described. Now with gradients, we have linear gradients and radial gradients that go from a central point. A reflected gradient that creates a clockwise wipe. A reflected gradient that creates a bar transition and a diamond shape. Now the most typical ones are going to be radial and linear for most tasks. Let's go ahead and undo here real quick. Just go back to the linear gradient and create our own custom gradient. To do this, we click on the gradient editor and it opens it up. Now, there are presets, and remember, you could click the little submenu here and load up different ones that may be available. We have all sorts of options to choose from, including color harmonies and noise gradients, and these can be built upon or modified. So for example, in this particular gradient, you see there are several colors in it, and each one of these along the bottom is called a stop. If you decided you didn't like that turquoise, you could just pull it off and it's gone. And the stops can be distributed. Now, on each side of the stop is a little midpoint that you can move to help define the relationship between the two. And remember, you can always move these around as you see fit. If you like that gradient, you can go ahead and click New, and it stores it for you up here temporarily. Never hurts to give that a name. And just click New, in this case, to store it. And I could delete this one by option clicking. So there we go. It's ready to be used, and I've got it. If I come over here and click OK, and I draw, you see it use those gradient colors I defined. If you want to modify that, just click and you're right back in. You have the ability to define the smoothness, how gradual it transitions between colors, and a lower smoothness value will create coarser results. You can also go in and define opacity stops. So if we want this to fade out, we can lower that stop down to 0. And now, as we draw with the gradient, let's clear that out, you'll notice that the color naturally fades off as it gets to the end. So, really precise controls. Now, besides the standard gradient, which uses a normal grad from one color to the next, we have noise gradients that are very flexible, and I like them a lot. If you click on the gradient editor, you could change this from a solid gradient into a noise gradient. And in this case, you define what colors are allowed in the noise. So let's go ahead and make a blue gradient for a sky. I'll pull the red and the green way down. You have to leave a little in and play with the blue there, with just a little bit of red and green in it for sky. We can then click Randomize to shuffle through the different variations, and I've got a noise gradient. Now if we click and drag, you see we get a nice natural blue. There are some stripes and things in there, but all I would do at this point is just blur that out heavily, and you have a nice subtle variation in the blue texture. So it's a pretty cool effect. Those are your custom gradient controls. They're very useful when creating backgrounds, web page textures, and as you'll see shortly, gradient maps for stylizing image colors.